So I read your book, Relentless, and very aptly titled. But you called yourself, or I think Quincy Jones called you a hyphenate.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're the ultimate hyphenate. You've done everything and had more career inventions than most people could ever say. And the one career invention I really want to talk about, I don't know if you're aware of this, but coming up March 1st is the 25th anniversary of when Live at Red Rocks started to air on PBS.
Yes, that's
changed
right. Yeah.
everything,
Yeah, it's
changed your
true.
life,
Yeah.
changed the game of PBS. And I think the story behind how this came to be is kind of crazy. It was like, there's so many things in your book that are against all the odds, like how did this happen? How did this actually work?
Sure.
And this one in particular, I think is like, I don't know if a lot of people know the story of how this came to be. So I first wanted, before we get into how that came to be, go a little bit about your background in music, because you almost were like a garage band guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, my mom was she was a retired surgical nurse, and so she was very disciplined. And my dad was he was a war hero in World War II. He's a chief petty officer, so it was like sort of being in boot camp in my family. But my mom's big thing was she wanted her kids to learn an instrument. So my oldest sister played cello, and my younger sister, who's still 9 years older than I am, she played piano, and so they wanted me to play piano and trumpet. But it was one of those things where it was like, I mean, you'd probably be child services, you know, because I mean, it was an egg timer that would go on the upright piano. My mom would put that, and I had, at 6 years old, I had to practice for 2 hours before I could go outside and play.
Oh wow!
So I had a lot of classical training, and also on the trumpet. But I was also, I'm 6'5" now, and I weigh 225. Okay. I'm a large human, but I was this height in junior high, 6'5", and I weighed 152 pounds.
Oh my God.
So girls would not talk to me. I mean, and if I stood sideways, they couldn't find me. So I thought, well, I'll get in a band and I'll be popular. So yes, everybody in the early 1960s was in a garage band. We had a garage, and I had a little mini organ, and so we played Dave Clark 5 songs. And you know, a lot of because there were only a couple of bands that had organs, right, keyboards in it. One was the Dave Clark 5, and the other was, of course, the Doors. So we played all that stuff.
But you're a big prog rock guy.
I'm a huge progressive rock, and I think the reason for that is thanks for even knowing that. Most people don't know that. Yeah, so yes, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and just for people who may not know what prog rock is, but in fact, Rick Wakeman is actually a friend of mine. He was the keyboard player from Yes. It's really the combination. For me, it was a combination of classical and rock and roll, and because it was complicated with different time signatures. Some of my early music has all those sort of 7/4, 12/4 time signatures in there.
So fast forward, you go on this illustrious career in broadcasting, but music is always there all along.
Sure.
So then you try in earnest to really do a music career, and you don't get the best reception at record labels, probably because of this hyphenate
That's kind.
thing.
That was kind of you.
Well, because of this hyphenate thing, probably is like,
Sure.
what, the guy from E.T. or the guy from CBS Sports
Yeah.
wants to do new age music or whatever. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I started writing music in earnest when I was at CBS Sports, where we'd be out doing the Tour de France bike race.
Are you a Kraftwerk fan, by the way?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
With Tangerine Dream too, if you know them. Yeah. See, now those are two things nobody else would know either. So I think I know now where. Yeah. So, and you're also a dancer, so you're nuts. Okay, perfect. And I mean that with love.
I felt the love.
Progressively rock nuts. What was the question? I forgot. While I was dissing you,
so you started to launch your music career, and you were saying that it was during the Tour de France.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. Thanks for listening. It's actually your job, which is wonderful. I was doing the Tour de France as an announcer, but they also needed music, and so we used Tangerine Dream and we used some Yanni stuff, and then we ran, and even Mannheim Steamroller. We ran out of music, so the producer said, "Hey, grab your synthesizers and write some of this music," because he knew I was a musician. So that's really where it started for me, and then bike aficionados would be like, hey, can we get that music, right? So I thought, well, wait a second. Now I'm on Entertainment Tonight, because fast forward to those years, I've got all these people, I've got all these tapes of Tour de France music and everything. It should be a layup, because 20 million people a night are watching me do this show. So Arista Records must love that. No, I have all of the turn down slips, on my wall still.
They didn't take you seriously?
Well. Well, I think to your point, I don't think they wanted the guy who was reading the celebrity birthdays to be on their label with Billy Joel, So I'm watching PBS for summer. I'm walking through the room or something. I'm watching PBS, and I see the Moody Blues at Red Rocks, and then I see U2 Under a Blood Red Sky at Red Rocks. I'm like, what is this place? And so I actually got on a plane with a friend of mine, and we flew there, and we stood in the Red Rocks Amphitheater, this ancient amphitheater, and I said, this is what I have to do. I have to raise my hand and say, I'm a serious musician. I have to make one of these specials. Because that's really when the pledge specials were so successful in earnest. Where they're basically it raises money for PBS, but it's also a great promotion for your career.
But at this point, you'd sort of gone back to the garage, right? You were selling tapes out of your garage, basically, like mail order tapes, and they were selling independently well. You had like your own label and stuff, so you'd sort of established a little credit.
And when you say I had my own label, I really had a label maker. Really what it was. Yeah, I had a duplicator, and I was duplicating music from the Tour de France and selling it in bicycle magazines. You know,
that's amazing. That's almost punk rock, honestly.
Oh, for sure. And by the way, when I was in New York, one of the first stories I ever did when I was on local news was I covered the Cramps at CBGB, so I was very aware of what the I know.
No, that's so great. But who would have thought?
Yeah, but so and I was also an entrepreneur as I was a kid. You know, I had the lemonade stand, and I did shows and stuff like that. So I didn't have a problem doing something like that, which was making those tapes.
So you take this trip to Red Rocks. You get, honestly, you're calling me crazy, a crazy idea that you're going to do this very ambitious concert in this very huge, famous venue, that place that U2 and the Moody Blues play, and you're gonna finance it with your own money, is my understanding.
Well, that was not my first idea.
What was your first?
My first idea was to take the idea, because I had done music for the Olympics, and I thought, why don't I get Bart Conner and Nadia Comaneci, these great gymnasts, to perform in the amphitheater, get the 80-piece Colorado Symphony with all of my songs and everything. And I took that pitch to PBS, and I said, I have an idea, I want to do this. And they were like, well, how many records are you selling right now? And I said, 5 a week. And they said, well, how many, something like that. And they said, well, how many concerts are you doing a year? And I said, 1. And they said, well, you don't really have a following musically. And
had you not really played much live?
I hadn't. In fact, I had, since I was a kid and I was forced to do all these recitals on the piano, I had a good bit of stage fright too. So it was like, it wasn't something I was really interested in doing. So why not do it at Red Rocks?
So ease yourself into it and play.
Red Rocks, yeah.
Special for Red Rocks makes sense.
So they said, I was on a conference call with them, right? Because they'll take the call from the host of Entertainment Tonight. He might have an idea, but they didn't like the idea. But they were great, and they just said, listen, if you do it, we'll take a look at it. But we can't finance it like we did the 3 tenors, right? And so I made the pitch to my wife, and so she said, what's it going to take? And I told her, and it was basically we'd have to take a second mortgage on our house.
How much did it cost, all things considered?
Oh man, it was, the first budget was $800,000. I know, and we figured it out. It would sell X number of records and all the rest of that. And I had put a lot of money away in Entertainment Tonight, and my wife, had put away money too, and we put it into our house. And so we'd only been married for, 4 years, 3 or 4 years at that point.
And she was pregnant also by this point.
Yeah, thanks for throwing that in.
No, I'm just saying, kind of a crazy time to be like, let's spend $800,000 and mortgage our house.
You're absolutely right, and it ended up being $1.2 million.
Holy cow!
When it was done, I know. And then, as you know from reading the book, a couple of songs in, the rain started at Red Rocks, and the orchestra left, and we thought we were done.
Before we get to that, how did you convince your wife this was a good idea, especially given all the circumstances? New marriage, baby on the way, a lot of financial risk. Seems like she was very supportive, so she's clearly the woman for you. But a lot of women would have been like, no, that's not going to happen. She knew it
was my dream was to be a full-time musician. But what's really wild about it? And I say this to people now about, they say, why did you write a book? And I said, I wanted to go through the process of looking back on my life and figuring out how some of this stuff happened. Mm-hmm. And so when I went back to connect the dots there, at the point where you are right now, I don't remember her, even she says, I can't believe I said yes to this. Because you're in the moment and you're like, and then you go back to connect the dots and you think, what did I say? What pitch did I? It must have been a pretty good pitch. Maybe I used a lower number. I don't know, how much it would cost. But yeah, so I I love her for it, but I don't remember why she would have said yes.
Well, there must have been other people in your camp, managers or whatever, that were like,
No, everybody was like, this is not, you should not use your own money. This can't work. We had had some success on QVC actually selling Christmas music, but it wasn't anything that would say go do $1 million special at Red Rocks.
So then, it's the big day. And as you just alluded to, weather was not on your side. You'd think you working in the broadcasting world for so long, you might have had a weather man or weather woman friend that would have tipped you off that it was going to pour buckets down that day.
Yeah, this is a lot like therapy, where the therapist says,
Tell me
"Why
about
were you?" No, it's more like, "Why are you such an idiot? Why don't you?"
Well,
no.
Clearly you weren't an idiot, because it all,
Okay.
spoiler alert, it paid off.
Okay, but.
You knew what you were doing.
Yes, I'm gonna make you look clairvoyant now, because not that you may already be, because what happened was we were told that it rains a lot at Red Rocks. And I said, well, let's get insurance. We found out what the insurance was, and it was as much as the special, basically, to record the whole thing. So they said, but it looks like it's going to be good that week. And sure enough, it wasn't.
So what happened?
4 songs in with the symphony, and you can see I'm in this, look. I look like Barney. I've got a giant blue suit on, and I'm just beaming. And there's 7,000 people in the audience. We gave away tickets. I'm surprised anybody came, but they did. And they filled the place up. And after 4 songs, it just poured. Sideways. And there wasn't really a cover over Red Rocks back then. And so the orchestra had to leave, because the stringed instruments would have been, thousands of dollars would have been ruined. So we thought, well, we're done. The house is gone and everything. But the audience wouldn't leave. So they just started putting on these see-through parkas and umbrellas and stomping on the ground like this, and the drummer's like, what's going on, And so he started playing along with it, and because I was ready to leave, right, and just say, oh well.
Yeah, what was going through your head? You're like, I've spent all this money. This was my dream, and now. In that moment, did you think your dream was over?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, but you could see it on my face on the special. And I looked out to the audience expecting just to wave bye to everybody, right? Because it was really pouring hard. But they weren't, I found out then that's what they're used to, whether it's me, the Beatles, or ZZ Top, and so they were staying, and they were stomping their feet like, come on, do something. So we started playing, the core band, there's 4 of us, and so we started playing, and it was nuts. Water was pouring out of the piano, and it was just everywhere, and wind, and we're slipping all over the stage, at Red Rocks.
It's good TV, though.
It was, another clairvoyant move, because what happened was, at the end of every song, there was no sound. The audience couldn't applaud because they only had one hand. Because of the umbrella, so there's umbrellas going up. That was their applause. So it looked like a bizarre Mary Poppins concert. It was really weird. So we just kept playing, and we thought, well, maybe, and the cameramen were still out there. They were all covered up.
Well, that's the thing that I found fascinating, that I found out from reading your book, is you didn't think they were filming at this point.
No.
You figured camera people had all jumped ship.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
You didn't know. You just were playing to please those 7,000 people.
Yeah. Any sane person would have jumped ship, but they stayed there, and it was, and then what happened was, supernaturally, after the 3rd, 4th song, the rain just stopped. And I looked up, and you can see it. I'm like this, just thanking God for stopping the rain. But then the moon came out, and then this mist, because the temperature had changed so drastically, came upon the stage. You'd pay like 10 grand to get a mist like that from a machine, And it's like, oh my gosh! And then the orchestra comes back, and we keep playing, and we send it off to, we mix it, 6 months of mixing, and we send it off to PBS, and there was a woman.
What was your reaction though when you found out that actually this had all been captured on film? I got to find out how you felt about that.
Yeah, I actually found out from my wife, who came with Prema, who was 8 weeks old. She was nursing Prema, so she's holding Prema like this, nursing, and she's going, "We got it, we got the whole thing," and I think, what? Yeah, they said they got it. So I said, what about the recording? So there's some sound of rain, but they got it. And the baby's like nursing like this, and Connie's so excited, and the baby pops off Connie's breast. Prema, and she looks at me like, what's going on? And they go bend back on the breast. It was like a Fellini movie or something. I don't know.
And then you send it to PBS.
We sent it like a rough cut to Maryland Public Television, and
Why Maryland?
because I had called all these PBS stations saying, this is what I'm doing, are you interested? And they said, well, we'll take a look. And so I had met this woman, she was like, yeah, hi John, you know, she's a really sweet Southern woman named Linda Taggart, who I still stay in touch with. Long story short, it is a long story, isn't it?
It's a good story though.
Thank you. She tested it at midnight on a Sunday night, which is a terrible time period for anything, really, for PBS back then. And she calls me up the next morning and she says, hey, you've got something here. We raised as much money with your special as we did with the Three Tenors.
Wow.
And I'm just, I mean, I could manifest the tears now. I was in tears, you know, and I just said, this is incredible. She said, I'm going to call everybody and tell them. And call everybody and tell them ended up being the special that changed my life and raised millions for PBS. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so huge that I read this in your book. Is it true that when O.J. Simpson's jury was sequestered and they needed some kind of entertainment, that they requested VHS tapes of Live at Red Rocks?
For the jurors, yeah.
Why,
yeah.
do you have any insight into like why that was on their list of must-see TV?
No, I think it was just, well, here's something that's, I don't know. I have no idea. But it was a long show. It was like 90 minutes long, so they figured maybe that would be a good palate cleanser or something. But when you hear something like that, it's, yeah, it was crazy.
What was the critical as well as just general public reaction to this in terms of establishing, like, as I mentioned at the top of this interview, there was a little bit of like, maybe people not taking you seriously
Sure.
because you're the ET guy.
Yeah. Well, and
how did this change that?
Well, and Leno and all the rest of those guys were, you know, they were always, you know, bashing me. It changed when Newsweek did an article, and the headline was "The Teshing of America," which is a little weird, you know.
You're a verb.
Yeah. Yes. There you go. And then on the other side of it, there was a video that came out. I went and did a story. I was a guest on Conan OBrien's show, and Triumph the Insult Dog was, but I didn't know that it was going to happen. So he did a segment with me, Conan did, and then as we went to commercial, he said, listen, I've got a surprise for you. Do you trust me? And I said, no. He said, perfect. He said, I'm not going to tell you what it is. So we come out, and all of a sudden, Triumph there going, Teshy, oh, Red Rocks, yeah, #1 new age album for me to poop on, you know, and then that was.
That's a good impression.
So, thanks. Yeah, well, I've heard a lot of him. Yeah, so that kind of stuff, not taking myself too seriously, right, really sort of warmed people up, I think.
I was about to ask you about that, as you always seem to be, you know, willing to play along with these. This was before mean tweets and all these other,
yeah,
you know, carpool karaoke and all these other bits. You always were seen pretty game to go along with being the butt of the joke, but being in on the joke at the same time.
As long as it was creative, and Conan's people were really creative. I mean, there was a piece he did. You can find it on YouTube. It was a piece on Yahoo. Excuse me. He did a piece called "When Tesh's Attack," and it was like a spoof on Animal Planet. And it was me as every animal, you know. So. Yeah, and it talked about how my music released neurotoxins in the brain that killed animals.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sure that's not true. I hope it's.
It sure looks true when you see the video.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely have a lot of fans among musicians. I know the Zappa brothers have talked about you. I know the Zappa brothers.
We've played together.
Have you?
Yeah, it was one of those Conan things where I was getting ready to come out and talk about the next special, which was Avalon, and Conan comes in and says, "Hey, this is Dweezil and Ahmet Zappa." I didn't even know there was an Ahmet Zappa, by the way. I just thought, and I had interviewed their dad a couple of times on Entertainment Tonight, which seems odd, you know, Frank Zappa on Entertainment Tonight. But they came in, they said, "Hey, would you do a song with us?" And I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And they said, "We'd like to do The Wizard from Black Sabbath." And so there aren't that many chords in it, so we figured it out. And I got the guitar out, the portable, and we played together. Yeah.
Is this on YouTube? Yeah. I need to find that. I'm a fan of guitars, so that's a good
You are?
Oh, yeah. It's got all the coolness of a keyboard with all the functionality and mobility of a guitar.
And all you must be a keyboard player, and the nostalgia of the 80s.
Yeah, it's just a good look. It just looks cool.
Not when you're 6'6". It looks like this. This is a toy.
Do you have any other like musician or rocker fans that people might be surprised that are fans of yours?
The guys from Yes, which was really, I mean, they've come to see us a couple of times, which is really, really daunting, you know, to have John Anderson sitting in the audience. I know a lot of these guys. You know, Billy Joel's band, his first band was called the Hassles, And
Even before Attila?
oh yeah, I believe so. Yeah, yeah. John Small was the drummer, and I think. Well, anyway, we were in a band called The Best of Both Worlds, my band, where we played Blood, Sweat, and Tears covers. I played trombone and also Hammond organ, and it was this. We were a rival band. It wasn't much of a rivalry. If Billy didn't want the gig, then we got it. And we played all the dances and stuff on. So we became friends.
Oh, I kind of would like to see a showdown though. Like that would be good. That'd be good.
Between
late
me
night
and Billy Joel?
Yeah.
No, you don't want to see that. Billy Joel's a jukebox. He's like Elton. He's like there's a couple of other guys there. Well, like I can my mind just fried. But anyway, that's enough. Those two guys, they can play anything, you know.
So this whole Red Rocks thing that we were talking about, it set you on the path. So, soon after that, you left broadcasting, went to do music full time, which again was another risk. You had a pretty cushy situation, I imagine, at ET, a stable situation. Have you ever regretted leaving the world of broadcasting behind?
I've regretted the way.
I know you do radio now, but you know.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I regretted the way I did it, and that which is also in the book. A lot of people don't know that Paramount filed suit against me when I announced that I was leaving Entertainment Tonight, and. What happened was I had a year left, or it was 6. Yeah, I had a year left on my contract, and when Red Rocks blew up, I just booked a 50-city tour because that's what you do with PBS, you know. And these were sheds, these were amphitheaters with 7,000, 8,000, 12,000 people, you know, who were buying tickets. But I didn't go to ET. This is so me, you know. And my wife's like, oh, yeah, people are gonna hate you when they read this chapter. I didn't go to Paramount and say, hey, here's an idea. Why don't I go and tour? Is it okay with you if I go and tour? I didn't see the torpedoes in the water. I just said, I'm doing this, and I announced it in Variety, and then they came and they said, listen, you have a contract. We're going to sue you in open court, and we're going to get an injunction against each one of your venues. And if that had happened, if that had been accepted, that suit, that injunction, I would have been totally bankrupt because yes, I would have been sued by the venues. All the tickets money had we would have lost all the money at Red Rocks because we couldn't sell records. So it went to court, and my buddy, my attorney, who was he's like a normal attorney guy, you know, was up against all of the Paramount lawyers, and they hired outside counsel and litigators, and we went in front of the judge, and the judge said, you can't force this guy to work, so I'm not going to issue this injunction. Go back and talk, and we did. And so Carrie McCluggage, who was running television at the time, and those guys, they were fantastic. And I think they just said, we can see how passionate this kid is. Let's not sue our host, right? But they had to. They had to go after me because every other contract would have been void of everybody else that was working there.
So did you burn a bridge in the industry because?
No, I don't think so. Only because, first of all, this is the first time that story's coming out. So who cares now? But also because we did make nice, and they have been tremendous to me, you know, since then, you know, promoting my music and everything. But it was a scary, scary time.
Well, speaking of scary, I'm going to switch gears for a minute because a lot of this book, Relentless, that you are about to put out is about your cancer battle and cancer survival. And you've had a whole lifetime of risks. And some people would say the way you've handled your illness, you know, had an element of risk to it as well, but things seem to be working out.
Sure, yeah.
So you were diagnosed initially in 2015, and from what I gleaned from the book, you went about with the kind of more traditional medical treatment
for
it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, because obviously you talk about your book is interesting that it's like a flashback, almost like a hospital bed flashback thing. It's like 1973 hospital, 1960 whatever hospital, like, you know, it's episodic like that. But when it came back, you chose to go a different route. So I want to talk to you about that and the reasoning behind it and how that has panned out.
Yeah, and the reason too of titrating it in like that was because I didn't want it to be like 3 or 4 giant chapters, you know. And plus, when I started, one of my editors, Niels Parker, had the idea of why don't you just, you know, titrate it in like that. And then all of a sudden, Connie, my wife, says, "Yeah, this is a great idea. This is the way they do it on This Is Us." And I hadn't seen the show, and I said, "Okay." So I'm watching This Is Us. Like, oh, you're right. This is exactly the way it is. It's just not as exciting, but this is, you know.
It moves the story along in an interesting way.
Yeah. So 2015, yeah, I got a. It was it was bizarre. I had no symptoms or anything, and you know, men go in for their PSA blood test, and it was normal, you know, which it can detect something going on with your prostate or even cancer, but it was really low, nothing, and then the rest of the exam showed that there was definitely something wrong. You know, the doctor felt something and said you need to have a biopsy, not a biopsy, but he said you need to have a sonogram and get it checked, and then that led to a biopsy, and then within, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, it was clear that I had, you know, stage 3.5 cancer, that there was something really bad going on inside me, and then one thing led to another. I ended up at Johns Hopkins. They did a guy named Ted Schaefer, a doctor, did a tremendous job you know, getting the cancer out of my prostate, and then I was clear, and the margins were clear and everything, and then it was like. It's like, let's just get another scan, and they found a lymph node that lit up, and then I ended up at MD Anderson because it's the really high-level oncology folks, and Dr. Logothetis and Dr. Brian Chapin looked at me and they're like, yeah, it's in your lymph nodes, and so I had another surgery, and then I had chemo, and for people who were watching, and plenty of people have been through chemotherapy and have family members who have. I had chemotherapy and androgen deprivation therapy, so ADT, which is they take all the testosterone out of your body. So I was basically going through menopause and also having chemo at the same time. It was a tremendous, some people can tolerate it. It depends on what it is and what drugs they're giving you to help you. I didn't do well. And I had all kinds of complications. And at one point in the hospital, everything sort of shut down, and they put an NG, I don't know if you know, a nasogastric tube, but they put that in your nose, and then they tell you to swallow it, and you swallow it into your stomach, and then they pump your stomach so that your bowels can, sorry for all this, but your bowels can recover. And at the moment they put that in my body, I looked at my wife, and I just said, you know, kill me, and because it was that difficult. And it was, you know, and I hate to say, you know, it was so much suffering, because it was, but then you go down and you try to walk, and you see kids that have got like 6 more IVs than you do that are like 5 years old, you know. So at that moment, I got out, and they said they got it again, right? And then it was during that period of time, we had somebody, well, a friend of ours, Cha-Cha Sandoval, who's a stunt woman here in town, right? She says, hey, I have this, she was also a cancer survivor, she says, I have this CD, you should listen to this CD. And it was this guy named Andrew Womack. And Andrew was a teacher who was teaching that in the Bible there are ancient scriptures that promise the healing, that when Jesus went to the cross, that he not only took our sins, but also took our sicknesses. And so I'm meditating on this, and Connie and I are studying this, and we went and spent so much time studying these specific scriptures, like Mark 11:23, which I have tattooed on my arm, of, you know, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will be done, shall have what he says. So we're saying that I can speak health over myself in Christ's name, and it's like, yes. So we started studying this, and then what happened was they did another scan. So we were growing up in this belief, right, and had faith for this. Another scan was like, hey, we think we saw another lymph node light up. So they sent me to a radiation oncologist. And so Gib and Connie and I went, and the guy said, we need to do 62 treatments over, like, 2 months of radiating your pelvis. And then he went through the list. You're going to lose bowel function, you'll lose kidney function, maybe bladder function, and then he said, and you'll probably lose sexual function. And once he got to
It was that last one.
Once he got the sexual function, faith was born. Did you ever see the 300?
I have.
Haven't seen it. Okay. So guys who have seen the 300 will know that when King Leonidas is faced with bowing down to Xerxes, the god, the boy king, he looks back at his wife, and his wife raises an eyebrow, and then he raises an eyebrow, and the next thing Leonidas does is he kicks the messenger into the well, and then the Spartan war is started. Connie and I shared that look, and faith was born, and I was healed. And the next test that I got, months later, I was clear of cancer. And so if I hadn't had those surgeries, though, right, because I didn't believe that way back then. I would have killed myself.
You're quite science-minded, I know.
I mean, I grew up that way, yeah.
Oh, you were, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it's, you know, these scriptures can actually affect your body at the subatomic level. And I know it's like woo, but it worked for me, and that's really my testimony.
So this second time when the cancer came back, this moment you were just talking about, you didn't at that time undergo any other like Western medical treatment, no surgeries, no chemo, no radiation, just
Correct.
scriptures only.
Yeah.
What are your doctors saying about this? They must be baffled.
They're happy.
I mean, happy,
They're
but
happy. Yeah, they're happy.
surprised.
But they were also a big part of the journey too. You know, I don't. I had enough unbelief in my life that if I had gone to Johns Hopkins and they'd said, okay, you have 6 tumors and we're going to grade them 9 out of 10, and I'd said, no, I'm sorry, Jesus just healed me, I'd be dead, because I didn't truly believe that. I didn't believe that. And that's why it's really important for people to understand you have to figure out what you have faith for. Mm-hmm. So I had faith for the doctors, and I still had faith for the doctors from many people. But it was Mark 11:23 and scriptures like it that got me healed. And I also had Connie again by my side, you know, an advocate not only for making sure that I was getting the right type of treatment, but beyond that, you know, us praying together and manifesting this healing.
But I imagine this whole situation dating back to 2015, when you were initially diagnosed, must have tested your faith many times.
It still does. It still does. I mean, there's a big difference between faith and. Can I just say you ask great questions? Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a big difference between faith and unbelief. So you can have faith, right? But then at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, are there still cancer cells in my body? And you really have to, you got to capture those thoughts and cast them out. You know, in our concerts, I always say, if you want to get one thing, get Proverbs 18:21, and that is, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And we sort of know that instinctively. If we walk around talking about how miserable we are, or how, oh my gosh, listen, my dad got cancer at the age of 63. I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 63. I know for a fact that I manifested that disease because I was so afraid of it.
wow.
I talked about it all the time.
But didn't you, I think you once said, I don't remember if this was in the book, that it was your father dying, ironically, that sort of made you start taking risks in your life, like with Red Rocks, for instance. So it's kind of all connected.
You know, fear chased me a lot. I think from the moment I ended up in that tent in North Carolina, almost 20 years old.
When you were homeless for a while.
Yeah, and I had burned my ships, and my dad threw me out. My girlfriend broke up with me. My university threw me out. You know, I was a walk-on 2-sport athlete at a Division I school at NC State, and I got kicked off those teams as well. You know, I was just done. I think if I had had some money, I would have been a drunk, but I didn't have enough money to buy beer, you know. But the fear that was in there, I think, has chased me all this. I think it's healthy, you know. And it's one of the reasons why I've always trained myself up in different areas. You know, I mean, I know how to run the cameras, I know how to edit video, I know how, you know. But a lot of people do now, but back in the 1970s, nobody really, because I was always afraid that, you know, fear and being fired was always chasing me, and it's an interesting elixir. You know?
Sometimes fear can be a good thing if it's fear that's not that you take action against, I guess.
Yeah.
As opposed to just sitting around in fear.
But you know, my band teacher when I was 7 years old, 2nd grade, Dr. Thomas Wagner, he was an amazing guy. He won New York State Teacher of the Year twice, and he had this process of risk and focused practice and intensity, right? And when I went back and connected the dots while I was writing this book, when I wrote that chapter about him, I'm like, oh my gosh, any success I've ever had, I worked Dr. Wagner's process. And it's all about the process. If you talk to like Jocko Willink, you know, a Navy SEAL, you talk to any of these people, they say, you got to fall in love with the process. And then I discovered this great quote. It's not in the book, but I discovered it afterwards, from Thomas Edison, who says, and it's so true, says, a lot of people miss an opportunity because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Isn't that great?
That is a good quote.
Isn't that great? I mean, listen, I know I've been free with the compliments here, but I've spent a lot of my life sitting where you do, right? I didn't read all the books. You read the book. And
I read the book.
And I appreciate that, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you writing it. I'm so glad your health is doing well. Any more music coming up for you?
We love playing live, so I've stopped writing for a while. I do miss one bit of writing though. I ended up, just real quickly, I ended up being the music composer for Howie Mandel's Bobby's World. It was a kids show, and I enjoy scoring cartoon stuff, and so I think I may go back and try some of that. Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak. It was fascinating, and I'm glad everything is going so well for you.
Thanks, it's my pleasure.